You can try using the brush in different ways. You can put it down sort of point first, or you can go like that, sideways, which I think gives a more interesting stroke. Hi everyone, I'm Diane and my passion is painting and creating nature-inspired watercolors in my studio, which are easy for you to do too. So welcome on board, click subscribe and turn on notifications, and let's learn to paint watercolor. Today we are going to take a look at this lovely new set of paints that I've just purchased for myself. Early birthday present, you could say. This is a Kuretake Gansai Tambi set of 48 colours, and I bought this because recently I was, tempted by these Gansai Tambi graphite colours, and I was tempted by them because I had 2 years ago been tempted by these, which are now getting a little bit worn, and I'm going to have to replace them soon, which is the Kuretake Starry colours. They also do gem colours and one or two others, I think. This I bought because it was Christmas, and this was before I started my channel. And so here's a little story. Before I started my channel, we used to go to Spain in the winter. This was pre-pandemic, to get away from all the rain in Brittany. And this particular year, which will be 3 years. 3 years ago now, we've had 2 Christmases since the pandemic, haven't we? Yes, that's right. I was in Spain and I took my watercolour paints with me because I always did, but I wasn't doing anything very serious. And I happened upon, once while I was browsing YouTube, I happened upon the realisation that there were channels on YouTube for painting. And I think the first one I came across, of course, was Emma Lefebvre, because at that time she was the biggest one out there, or at least the biggest one that was sort of relevant to me, and I wanted to paint some Christmas cards. So I did some of hers, and she used a gold paint similar to this, not this particular one, I don't think. Hers was a round palette thing. And so I thought, I want some of them. So I managed to get hold of some of those even though I was in Spain. So that's how that started. They're very nice. They're opaque. If you haven't got a set and you ever think you might want to add a bit of shine to your paintings, then you need to get some of them. Cheap as chips, as they used to say. I did a little sort of sketch using these two things the other day, and I will do a tutorial for this because this is a fun one to do. Not sure if you can see, but it's got gold on it, a few splashes of gold. And I just did a loose wash, let it dry, and it looked like this at that point, only slightly different colours. This one's on a yellowish toned paper, so it came out a little bit greeny. This one is on a bluish toned paper. It's supposed to be white, but it looks bluish when you compare it to that, doesn't it? So that came out cleaner. Then I just drew some things on there in ink and put some light washes on top of the actual flowers, and then put some gold on top. And, you know, anyone can do that, can't they? So that was just a trial, but I think I might develop that a little bit and do a tutorial on it. Let's put these out the way. Anyhow, so that's the story of how I came to be interested in Kuretake. Also, the other thing that happened was, and it's funny how these things do happen, Viviva sent me a set of their colour sheets, which, if you haven't met them, they look like this. And you can go to their website and order them. And they have these really bright colours in here, which are really fun to use. And it's a little bit awkward, this arrangement. So later they came out with this, which is the pans that they do in a, what do you call it, cork palette. And it looked very nice when I first got it. But of course, after a little while, the paint starts to dry out, as you can see, and it sort of lifts and everything. So it's all not very practical. But when they sent me these things, they also sent me a water brush. And the water brush really got my channel off the starting blocks, so to speak. This is the famous water brush with which I did the 5 little birds, which have now got, I a lot of views, and that really got the channel started. So thank you, Kuretake, for making this. And so then, therefore, it's all one big happy family, all linked together. Everything connects with everything else, as they say. So I'm going to undo this. I haven't opened it yet. And the thing I like about the Gansai Tambi, I don't know what that means. Does that just mean watercolor? I don't know. I feel stupid saying it. What I like about these Kuretake paints is that the pans are big. And I have always been a fan of, no, that's not true. I have always used, because there wasn't anything else to use at that time, since the beginning of time, when I first started painting, I used to use Winsor & Newton, Artist Colours, and Copman as well, and De La Rowney, and later on Schminker. But those paints, the traditional ones, have been somewhat challenged by these Japanese ones, I think. And I want to make sure I'm not missing a trick, so to speak. So all of this packaging can come off. The good thing about this is that they are in a cardboard box rather than a tin. So it's much lighter for shipping, cheaper to produce. And when you run out, if you happen to use one of these up completely, you can buy them again to replace your set. Plus, and this is something I will be doing, if you want to do a painting and you want to use certain colours, you can just pull those colours out and set them aside like that and limit yourself to whatever colours you choose that you're going to use in that painting, which I think is a really big advantage. However, for today, I'm going to paint a multicoloured floral, and so I'm going to use probably many of these. So I'll leave them all in their box, I think. It'll spoil the box, but hey, you know, life's too short to worry about this. We've got lots of different reds, and on the chart that they sent with it, which is here, you can see that, if you can read that, you can see that a lot of these colours are the traditional colours. It's not wacky or anything weird, like the Gallo names, which are called things like fig green. These have got the traditional names like olive green, and which isn't to say that Gallo don't have olive green, of course they do. But we've got aureolin, we've got cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, raw umber, all of the normal colours that you find in any set of watercolours. So if you're just starting out, you could do worse than this. This is only about $50. And to be honest, that is an absolute steal. You can't argue with that, can you? That's an absolute bargain. So obviously they suggest that you should swatch out the colours before you start. This swatching out of things is obviously fashionable these days, and they suggest that you do it on this piece of paper here, and I probably will, or you could do it on the inside of the box, or both. Hey, who's to stop you doing that? If you like swatching, Swatcherama is here. I don't. I like to, well, I sort of do, but I kind of haven't got the time. Again, life's too short, and so I'm going to wish that I had a double-decker desk so I could put things on it better. And I'm going to do a painting using as many of these colours as I can to try them out. I have not used these ones yet, so I have my lucky stone here to keep me on track. I'm probably going to use, should I do it that way or should I do it that way? I think I'll do it that way because it fits on the board and I can't be bothered to move it again. I'm going to use a quill brush. This is a small quill. I have various different sizes of this, ranging from this one to this one. And this is for big paintings when you can really slosh it on, yes, with this Isabey. Please, no comments. This is made from squirrel hair. I don't know about that. I'm not going to comment. This is made from squirrel hair. I don't have very many natural hair brushes. I have a few. They are very, very old, at least 30 years old. And this is a tiny one, and that's what I'm going to use. I've got 2 big pots of water here, clean water, cleanish. And I've got my Spontex thin sponge cloth, which is meant for the kitchen, which I cut in half and put the 2 pieces on this little Japanese dish. And that I use for taking excess water off of my brush when I'm painting and if I have excess water. Sometimes when you're doing a floral, it's best to start with the brightest and the lightest colours. So the brightest and the lightest colour here is yellow. So let's start. I think I will do it this way up. I will start with the yellow. So we're just going to splash in some yellow. One of the things that attracted me to this set was that it said that they don't need any pre-wetting in order to work. And I think that's a really good thing because, well, sometimes it can be a bit tedious, can't it? So I'm just using this brush. I'm holding the brush really quite close to the end so I get the maximum amount of freedom. And I'm going to try as many of these colours as possible. That doesn't seem to be very different. I'm just going to wash my brush out there and see whether that is... No, that's not really very different. Okay, let's try an orangey colour. I'm working on a sheet of Arches paper here, and the reason for that is that I wanted to give the paint the best chance of performing well. And I thought if I use any old paper, it won't be a fair crack of the whip, so to speak. So I opted for, my hand came upon an old sheet of Arches that was lying around. I don't use hot press often. This is not for £300. This is a lighter one than that. Okay, so far these colours are looking fine, nice and strong. Maybe I should sit down. I get nervous about the camera not recording ever since the other day when the phone rang while I was recording and it turned the camera off and I was talking to myself for a significant period of time. You feel a bit silly when you, oh, no, don't make me talk about that again. Okay, so we'll do a few strokes of each of these colours, gradually building up. And seeing what happens. As we mix and mingle across the paper. You can try using the brush in different ways. You know, you can put it down sort of point first, or you can go like that, sideways, which I think gives a more interesting stroke. Here's a pink coming up. All the reds here look the same, but they obviously aren't. This is a stronger pink. Okay, so I've almost gone over the whole of that row there, and I'm going to switch now to blue, and we'll start here with the pale blue, I think. It says that these paints are can be used like gouache. If you don't use very much water, you can use them as a sort of semi-opaque colour. I don't know whether I ought to talk about gouache. I might say something I'll regret later. But I don't understand. I'm hearing a lot of very strange things being said about it and about acrylic. And this is, I'm going to say this. I used to paint in acrylic. Okay, I need another blue that's not quite so pale. This one looks as if it's going to be dark, but it's not terribly dark. So I'll just pop some of that in various places. These colours are nice. They're very nice. I'm quite excited by this. Oh, I tell you, I wanted to say something also about these, which is one of the main reason why I decided to get this is that the amount of backgrounds that you get when you use these graphite colours are minimal. Most watercolour paint, when you add water to the paint, once you've put it on the paper, if you add more, you create a sort of background, which means that the excess water pushes the pigment out of the way and leaves you with sometimes what could be considered to be an unwanted line. And I noticed, actually, I didn't notice it first, Tamsin did. She said, oh, that's amazing. There's no backgrounds on that. And you've been adding water and just randomly splashing it in and nothing's happened. So that is true. And so I thought, wow, that's interesting. Okay, I'm looking for a cleaner blue. I don't know what colour that is. We've got lots of greenish blues here. And a pale blue there. I don't know what that is. Oh, okay. That's a navy, I would say navy blue, something like that. Okay, so now we've got quite a bit of blue, quite a bit of yellow, quite a bit of red, and feeling quite liberated here. So now what we could do now is we could put in some what would you call it? Some shapes which remind you of flowers. So I'm going to just grab my Poetique water brush pens here, and I'm looking for a piece of paper to try them out on before I go mad. So we could put in some some lines. That's green, and here's another darker green. And it's possible that when I get to a bit further on this, I might decide I want to embellish, but I'm not sure yet. So it's sort of, I'm thinking, hello, Frankie. Stems, you know, a few stems. That's what I'm trying to say, lines. Stems. This is just the beginning. Frankie, there's food in your bowl. Hello, Lottie. Okie doke. Now, having done that, I think probably I still want to build this up a little bit more. And let's see what colour this is before I put it on. As you go forward, you're going to start to think, I need to be a little bit careful what I add. So because of that, what I'll do is, if I'm going to add some darker blues, then I won't put them just anywhere. I'll add them to the blues. Or you might do a whole flower in just that colour, in that darker colour. Then you could drop some really intense and neat paint into the centre there, which will then spread out, and you could do that down on these ones too. So where it's dry, it just sits, and where it isn't dry, it runs. Okay, so we need now to think about the greens, I think. That's a very bright green. I think try this one. Yeah, okay, so start dabbing in some green. Oh yeah, while I'm just doing this a little bit of green here and there, I wanted to say about acrylic. I don't understand what's happened with this idea that acrylic is painted straight from the tube and you don't use water. When I first started to use acrylic about 100 years ago, I used it actually as if it was watercolor, because I didn't have any watercolors at the time. So I just diluted it with water and then used it to paint just exactly like this. And you can. So although it's true that you can use watercolor straight from the tube, and I do that if I'm doing something like painting the outside of a flower pot, but if you're painting a picture, I cannot for the life of me imagine doing it like that, just with no water. I just don't know how you would do it. So acrylic is used with water. It is. Should be. At least some of the time. You might use it neat from the tube sometimes, but to use no water at all, I don't understand that. Rant over, as they say. And we'll put some nice, almost fluorescent, this green is. You're not going to have problems painting a lively and bright picture with these paints if you use them neat. Using them straight from the pans is great. Doesn't mean you don't use any water though. Lots of water, lots of water. Okay, I'm going to go back now to the yellows and reinforce some of these yellow flowers by coming back in with more blobs of colour. This is a very enjoyable process, and I think you'll love it. And if you do want an early Christmas present from a loved one, this is a great one. And I will put the link in the description below, and if you go to my Amazon shop, which is amazon.com/shop/Diane Antone Studio, you will find there a link to Amazon for this, which if you use our links, then we get a small but not insignificant commission from our god of the retail world, Amazon. Okay, now the same again, we're going to come back with the reds and add to the strokes, just literally just blobs, not trying to create a shape. Just going over. This is a pink one. We make the pink one a bit darker and see what colour this is. Didn't use that one. Okay. This blue is really quite opaque. It's a bit like the periwinkle blue in the set from A Gallo. That's a sort of opaque kind of colour. Okay, so I think I'm probably going to let this one dry at this point. I do think it's probably going to need a bit more in the way of leaf structure, perhaps. So something like this. This is where these watercolor brushes come in really handy. You can build up your shapes using these. So, but I'm not going to try and do anything in the middle because it will run. So I will let that dry and then we'll come back and have a look and see what we think. But so far so good. I would say these colours are adorable, for want of a better word. Okay, so that's nice and dry now, and I'm just going to come back in again with a few touches of some of the colours where it's perhaps faded down a little bit. And I don't think it needs an awful lot done to it, really. It's a nice, light, bright, cheerful painting with very little structure. You could probably... create a lot of petals. So you could probably, if you've got the time and the patience, you could probably come in and paint a lot of flowers in more detail into these spaces. But I think myself, I quite like it when things are really loose, really, really loose. And this one certainly is. And I know full well that if I were to play around with it too much, I'd end up not liking it at all. And so there we are. That's the thing. I think that needs a bit of blue there, though. That puts a bit of blue in there rather than yellow. I tried the yellow, didn't like the yellow, taken the yellow out. You could probably paint in a few more leaves. You could pick up some light green and just come in sort of higgledy-piggledy with green leaf colour. Don't want to make it too dark though, and you do need to leave some white spaces. I think that's probably quite important, to leave some white. Maybe if we want to make it fairly symmetrical to a certain extent, we might want to put a bit more colour down here. I've switched to a drawwell brush, one of my round nylons, instead of the loose, what did I call it? This one. I've switched from that, which is super loose, to this, which gives me a little bit more control. And I'm not going to do much more. What I will do, though, is I'm going to pick up a brush, one of these things, Kuretake water brush, and I'm just going to put in a few connecting stems. Not much, just a few in, and maybe a few stamens, things like that, or a few dots. Nothing much. And it's not obligatory. This paper is bleeding, so this is a good reason not to do too much on there. So anyway, I think I'm going to leave it at that, pretty much. If you identify flowers, you can always make them look much more like blooms by putting in the stems, which I think I've done mostly for most of them. And if you want to make the leaves look more like leaves, then you just put in a centre vein, and then that looks like a leaf. Hey presto. So have fun, give it a try. I really enjoyed using these Kuretake paints. I think that is probably the brightest and cleanest painting I've ever done, in the sense of the colours are really fresh and yeah, spring-like, really, isn't it? So have a look at the Amazon shop, amazon.com/shop/Diane Antone Studio, and you'll find these there for you to take a look at online if you want to get yourself a set. If you haven't yet got a big set of proper watercolours and you're still using the ones that belong to your children, this is not a bad place to start. I think you probably can't go far wrong there, and they're only about $50 for the set. So yeah, that's a really good find and a really good buy, I think. So I'll let you go. I'll see you again tomorrow. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe, turn on notifications and all the rest of it, and I'll see you again soon. Bye everybody. Bye-bye.